just keep an open mind. There's always something useful around the corner, right? And be willing to experiment with it and try things out. Especially if you're in a rut, score plateau, motivation wise or otherwise, I think it can really hopefully shed some light on what you're doing well, even, and
Yeah.
maybe things that you can improve on
Yeah.
if you just keep an open mind about it.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Seven Sage Podcast. Today I have Eric with me. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah.
Good to hear for you. Eric and I have something very different planned for everyone. It is the Thanksgiving LSAT episode. And so we're here to talk today about 5 LSAT tips that we are most grateful for. So, we have had time with our family, we've had dinner. And Eric, are you ready to
Oh,
just
I'm very ready. I am full of food and full of gratitude. So ready to talk about it.
perfect? Let's just get started. LSAT is very intense, it's humbling, it's often overwhelming. And so the first thing that comes to my mind that I'm the most grateful for looking back is showing up on bad days.
Mm,
Um, and my bad day could mean, some days when I am all the way from sick and, I can't study, and all the way from when I don't want to study. And so, Eric, did you have those days where you didn't want to show up for LSAT because, life's getting in the way, holidays are getting
yeah.
in the
Yeah, completely. And I mean, certainly at the time, it's hard and it's difficult to sort of see the big picture of why we're doing it and the challenges that kind of come along with studying for the test, other obligations that kind of like tempt us, whether we
way.
want to or not. But I definitely think, certainly looking back on it, I would also say I'm very grateful to have kind of continued on that path and shown up and done even just a little bit on those days,
Yeah.
right? To kind of keep the brain going and to sort of keep feeding the LSAT machine that's sort of building up in my head. And yeah. So once it's finally completed, we can be very grateful that
Yeah.
we did all that hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
I definitely agree. I think it's important to take, each day and ask,
Mm,
okay, what is my capacity today? But
mhm.
then I think also knowing the difference between, like I want to, but I shouldn't. And I don't want to, but I should. So I think the first one to start was like, I don't want to, but I should study, which is like more of my days.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, and I think one thing that helped me get through was having a routine
Mm,
and making a promise to myself that I was gonna be on the desk just for 1 hour. Just for 1 hour, and I already knew what I was gonna study, so it was already pre-planned. And if I still didn't feel like it, like if I was actually like something is wrong with me today, then I get to quit after that 1 hour. But oftentimes that routine of being on the desk at 9 a.m. or 5 p.m. really helped me get the ball rolling.
yeah.
And I think once the ball is rolling, I'm able to stick for it for a lot longer. It's the first 20, 30 minutes are the hardest. The routine was, I think, what helped me get through. What about you?
Oh, no, I totally agree. As you were speaking, I was thinking, I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but I think that's true for a lot of habits that you want to build, especially ones that are meant to be good for you, but maybe are not so enjoyable in the moment. I
Yeah.
definitely think, yeah, making sure that you take, you sit at your desk or wherever you're going to study, you go to that coffee shop, you actually open up the material
Oh, yeah.
and you start working on it. And yeah, after a little bit, it starts to feel a bit easier, usually, right? And then those days end up hopefully not being so bad. Certainly, I would say for myself, there were days where, yeah, after that, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, if I could admit to myself, I might decide, I think today I put a little something in there. I hopefully, even if I didn't learn new things by, I reflected on something that I recently did, and I was able to, just do a reading comp passage or something, and I feel accomplished enough that I could say, okay, maybe close it and come back tomorrow. But certainly, like making sure that I actually like went through that process. I think it goes a long way. It definitely goes a long way for even just motivation.
Yeah, I definitely agree, like and I think that's kinda what I mean is reflecting on what your capacity is, as Eric
Yeah. Mhm.
sometimes an hour 45, you are going to say, "That's enough." And I've had those days where I know
Mhm.
if an hour 45 later I still feel this way, it is over. Time to pack up. But most of the time, that learning gets you excited, it gets the ball
Yeah.
rolling.
Mhm.
What about I don't want, I want to, but I shouldn't, really quick before we jump to the next
Mhm.
thing. Have you had those moments, and I had them, where I was sick, and I shouldn't have studied, and I ended up studying, and I actually had the biggest burnout from it.
Mm,
I
mhm.
actually had to take an actual break from LSAT because I couldn't read anymore, um, when beyond the point I should be studying.
Yeah, that actually happened to me as well. Um, and that actually, I'm thinking of something I'm grateful for, which is having a bit of patience with myself, but also resilience. And I think there's a balance between the two, right? Because you want the resilience to show up, and to make yourself put in the work. But you also want the patience with yourself to sort of know when to scale it back, and to sort of be a bit more, we'll say, forgiving in a certain way. Certainly, when I was studying, and this is also something I advise for a lot of people that I work with. Make when we put in a lot of work per day, especially later in the evening, I think is the hardest. Reading comp, ironically, I'm teaching a reading comp later tonight. Um, but just saying, reading comp late in the evening,
Okay.
it's its own challenge. And I think, when I made myself put in those hours, and especially at a time of day that was challenging, or for other reasons that I was, having a bad day, definitely it sort of impacts how you view the test overall. So I think something that I was very grateful for, to kind of talk about that, was having a bit of patience with myself to sort of understand myself and say, okay, today I had a bad day overall, and also I tried to study for the test when maybe I shouldn't have done so much, but it's okay. I still put in some work. Hopefully, I gathered some intel on myself and things that I maybe could have done differently or done better, or just reflect on that process a little bit further. And that, I think, also, to kind of put a positive spin on it, you do learn more about how you approach the test, and how you approach studying overall, when you have those days and you have maybe a bit of a negative experience, but you can sort of turn it into something that can guide you in the future. So there's some pros and cons to that, really.
I love you bringing up, like, resilience and having the patience, because it's so important to have the patience, especially with
Yeah. Mhm.
comp, right? That's I think, at least for me and a lot of other students, it's one of the slowest areas where students improve, and so having the patience and the resilience to get through it is, extremely important. Switching it to the next thing I'm grateful for and kinda building off on that, um things that help me, like, get through and actually improve, wrong answer choice journal, or, like,
Mm.
some way of writing it down. I think so many people don't have the patience to do.
Speaking of which.
Yeah, and so I would say, like, looking back, I felt like it was excruciating when I would get assigned to write the core argument, and for anyone that doesn't know core argument, that's like, in your own words, write down the conclusion without looking back, and the premise, the analysis, and then write down why each answer choice is wrong and right, following your steps of that question type. So I found, like, that would take forever.
Mhm.
And then if you miss it, I had to write a parallel argument, which is like, how would the outside writers, right, write a similar argument? 'Cause it's gonna show up again. So you can either do 10 of these questions and finally start getting them correct, or you can learn the right lessons and see how it's gonna show up. I found it, like, excruciating and, yeah, like, what do you think? Did you have to do the
Yeah, it's funny. I did something similar, especially for a lot of flaw questions. Because flaws, we talk about the common flaws, and conditional reasoning as well. For me, being able to use those words in my own sentences, being able to spot them out in the world, and just sort of understand them in that way. Yeah, I definitely think it's, first of all, like, just practically speaking, it's a great way to learn the test. I guess I would actually be thankful for that because it does make the test more interesting, hopefully a bit more relatable. It makes it more almost like visual in a certain way because a lot of the just more sensory, for whatever reason, a lot of the sentences I always come up with, they have to do with food, they have to do with sports, activities, those sorts of things, right? So it really connects to other aspects of my life, or just hopefully more common ground for most people, I'm sure. But making that the test a little bit more fun in that way, even though it's a lot of work to make those arguments, to make sure, to your point about being really thorough with those, that it actually checks out, that it's faithful to the core concept that we're trying to cover when we're actually learning those things. Yeah, on the back end, there's a lot of thought that goes into it, but when you actually have those arguments or those sentences and you understand them, I think it really connects you to the material in a way that hopefully encourages us to continue working with it. So it all sort of ties together, definitely.
It was like a favorite memory where like or like unfavorite memory,
Right, yeah.
resilience and things we're talking about. You know, I was assigned to write the right answer choice for parallel argument. Like what does
Mm,
the choice need to have to start being correct? So I could spot it the moment it stops being correct.
mhm.
And I wanted to quit LSAT that week.
Yeah, well,
It was, again, like, so painful, and the reason, like, I think we're so both grateful in our own ways for things we had to do is because they built I'm gonna say it built me to be, like, very sharp at spotting
mm,
errors. It,
mhm.
like, built us to get through things where, like, we couldn't see the light. Because the bad is part of LSAT, right? There's this darkness with LSAT where, like, there are days where you feel like, "Am I gonna get this?" Or sometimes you're like, "I don't think." There were days for me I was like, "I
Yeah,
don't think."
yep. Mhm.
Like, I was sure, and I see this in my students, they're sure they're not gonna get that
Mm.
score. And I'm like, "What you talking about? It's a learnable skill." And so having, first, like if you are going through that, just remember that it is a learnable. And also see this as a practice of resilience as Eric is talking about and, having the patience. And then there are a few things that like we're talking about that can help you build that as well. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, whenever I assign that sort of work, to a student, it's daunting, right? Because it is a lot of work. Also, it looks like a lot of work, and it's difficult to see in the moment why, because we think, oh well, technically I'm not doing an LSAT question anymore, it's like tangential, so is this really going to help me get the right answer, and what's the purpose of this, and I can do this well, and also it's difficult to know that I'm doing it well, and how do I even know that I'm going to get the right answer next time? Those are all valid questions, by the way. I think it's very reasonable to ask those things,
Yeah.
but it really is, to your point, when you're building a skill, for anything, you really have to break it down into those small chunks, right? And be able to appreciate working on those small chunks, even if on test day, or I was talking about sports earlier, like on game day, that little microcosm of the skill maybe only comes up like once or twice at all, and you may not even be aware that you're using it. Fortunately for the LSAT, it'll probably come up more often. But I think just I'm not ideally, we would enjoy that process as much as we can. I get that, in the moment, it's a bit, taxing, but I think just, yeah, appreciating that there's a way to learn the test, honestly, that there's a way to do it, there's a method, and there's a path that's been, or at least multiple paths, that have been sort of already explored, and that you're not wandering in the dark, right? I think it's a really, hopefully encouraging atmosphere. And on that note, I would say another thing I'm grateful for is having study buddies, because I think, or someone to talk to, right? Just someone to talk to about the test, tutor or otherwise, right? Having someone to just bounce ideas off of. If they're also studying for the test, great. Even if they're not, but they're receptive, you can share we'll say frustrations. You can share frustrations. You can share your good scores and your bad scores, and those reading comp passages that you absolutely hate, and those LR questions that you just don't understand. But just having someone to rant to or to teach to, right? Because that can also help you with your own journey. I would say I'm very grateful for that as well. I remember there was one particular day I was studying. Ooh, do I remember the question? I think it was a necessary assumption question, and for the life of me at the time, I did not understand the difference between necessary and sufficient assumption questions. But I approached it like I thought they were just all assumptions. Like, what's the difference? Um, and I just ranted about this question for probably 5 straight minutes, because I was very good at sufficient assumptions, if I may say so. And this question, I did not understand how could this be the wrong answer? And then thankfully, this other person just kind of let me let me get it off my chest. And then they simply pointed out, I was like, well, did you realize that this question is asking for this, and therefore this is how you should think about it? And I said, no, I didn't think about that. But immediately I was like, oh, well, that's a bit of hubris on my part. But having someone to talk to in that way, I think is a really important part of the process too. And I'm very grateful to have had that myself. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was thinking of my own moments as you were bringing up this.
Sure.
And one thing I keep telling students, it's so important to have someone to talk to. Even
Mm,
like, yes, a tutor is good, and I definitely agree it's better than not having anyone, but you need someone who's like honest with you.
yeah.
I think in a lot of ways as tutors, we will tell you what to do, but there is like we're not like mean about it.
Mm.
But your buddies will be like your buddies.
Yeah.
Sir, like, this is a different question type. They listen and they're like, what are you doing? You gotta go back to that core curriculum. I had a similar moment where, I'd gotten through core curriculum, or I thought I did. Like you think you've gotten through it, you think you
Mhm.
own it. And I was doing, and again, I was in the study group that was just like free on 7th Stage and on the discussion boards. Great, great people. Some people would leave, some people would come back, some people would stay along, but like you make friends.
Mhm.
3 a.m. at night. And I'm like, I remember this question. It's like, when the windows are open, it looks like it's a single space.
Ah, yes, the
Yeah,
the garden and the
the
living room and the
garden.
adjoining space. Ooh, I love that question. Was it
Yeah,
MSF mostly
yeah.
through?
Oh,
Yeah.
and I was like just falling all over. Maybe it was 3 a.m. Maybe it
That's a
was,
hard question,
that's a
yeah.
hard question. And the person goes like, it shouldn't take this long to recognize you need to connect the two or they don't connect. Your problem
No.
is you need to brush up the co-curriculum. And, like your tutor will say it a lot kindly and maybe you'll go and maybe you won't, but your study buddies will not hesitate to listen and at 3 a.m. be honest with you brutally
True.
about things, right? Or like, are you sure you're getting the grammar right? Or
Mhm.
like, and then that was an epiphany for me that I should maybe do some more grammar work, right? So I can break down sentences more. And so I definitely say if you don't have one, a way I tell my students is to hop on these live classes,
Mhm.
like participate, get in the chat, and you'll start vibing,
Yeah.
right, with some students, and then just reach out, say, "Do you wanna study?" And, you kind of vetted them out and see over time whether it works or not. And, you know, working together with someone who can challenge you, I think, and listen to you is an incredible part of my journey. So I agree with Eric. Like, if you don't have one, make a friend. It's not that hard. People like are very lonely studying for the test. It's a
Yeah.
very lonely thing if you think about in your family. Um, yeah. What do you think? Just one friend, or did you have like a lot more?
Just the one. Ooh, just the one friend.
Eric is more of
Just
an
the one. No one wants to listen to me talk about the test. Well, maybe some people. I teach live classes too, so hopefully
yeah,
some people.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I have to say real quick, when I started teaching the live classes, that was something that really surprised, but I guess in hindsight, it shouldn't have surprised me that people were talking to Chad and sending messages to each other and finding study buddies. And I would hear about it from some of my students, like, "Oh, that's great! You're working with such and such. Both of you come to my live classes. I had no idea you guys were talking to each other on the side, which is great. Keep it on topic, right?" But yeah, I thought that atmosphere was really, I mean, just beneficial to put it very
yeah.
simply. And I was very, yeah, pleasantly surprised by that aspect of 7th stage myself, because I didn't study it on 7th stage originally. So
Yeah.
that was something that I hadn't thought of, to use in that way.
Glad you brought it up because it's just, it's a funny thing, but it's so important.
Yeah.
Your
Mhm.
instructor maybe once a week, maybe if you're really lucky twice a week for
Mhm.
2 hours,
Mhm.
but it's your study buddies that you're
Mhm.
going to need to lean on for advice. Your study buddies are the ones that are gonna stay with you studying, so make sure you pick, a group. Try out multiple, like, I think I tried out a few people before I found, like, my group,
Mm.
and they'll definitely get you through, like, the hard days that we're talking
Yep.
about, right? An additional thing to lean on is that. Um, which brings us to the last thing, the 5th thing that I am grateful for, which is I'm really grateful for learning how to study differently
Mm.
every time I hit a plateau. I think most students, when they don't see a rise in their scores, they keep doing, right, what they had been previously doing to get to that score. So, like, initially, you take a diagnostic, you get through the core curriculum, and you get into maybe a high 150s, low 160s, even a mid 160s through a little bit more practice test. And then you're stuck. Then you're stuck and you keep doing the same write ups, the
Mhm.
same things, and you don't see an improvement. And, this is where I think it could be combined, like resilience and everything else, like study buddy, getting a tutor, live classes, all those help extra. But you have to figure out when you hit a plateau, not how to keep doing the same thing, but how to study differently. What do you
Yeah.
think, Eric?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just having in a way of similar way to like having that sort of feedback or
Yeah,
even just experimenting on your own, but it can really give ideally first of all a new perspective, right, on what the test is about. Hopefully it'll motivate you a little bit because now you're trying things a bit differently, shake things up, and kind of give yourself a fresh start in a way. And I mean those things because studying for the test can be, yeah, it can take a long time. It can take a long time for a lot of people. Ups and downs, taking the test, sitting the test once or twice, retakes, all that sort of stuff. And so having some sort of, even if it's a bit of a detour, but you try something for a little while and you come back, I think can really shape the way that you sort of approach the test overall and keep yourself sane, ideally at the end of the day. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's very easy to be like, it's just my motivation, because you're not
Mhm.
seeing an improvement. It's just, I'm not just doing core argument enough. Like,
Mhm.
I see sometimes people do need to go back to core curriculum, but there are times I'm like, what are you talking about? Conditional logic.
Mhm.
It's not conditional logic. It's you need to do something differently. Like maybe it's timing strategy. I think it's really important to ask and get help at this point if you truly don't know, like, what to do
Mhm.
different. I'm grateful that I had a tutor who was like, "Well, here's a strategy you need to try out. You're trying to get a 180. You're trying to blind review under time conditions. That's not gonna work. You need to prioritize questions better," and he gave me a strategy to deal with that. And kind of coming back to the point that you had, I also had to teach a student, right? Like
Mhm.
for free. But, like a part of learning is, are you able to explain to someone
Yeah.
else? And that solidifies. And also, can you talk about timing strategy with them? That also solidifies things with them. So I was very grateful for different points, different strategies, or different ways of studying and adapting, right? Otherwise,
Mhm.
we're going to be in this either you're going to give up
Yep.
because you're not seeing an improvement, or it can take a very long time for finally things to click.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's yeah, I mean ultimately getting information from multiple sources and kind of taking whatever, sounds good to you or what sounds interesting, right? And I think kind of experimenting with it and being willing to do so. I think is also really important and to recognize that it's worth trying, especially have a bit of a longer time frame, and not to rush certain things as well. To that point about patience earlier, and to the point about blind review and being a bit patient in that way too. I think, and sometimes it's worth it just to change things up a little.
Yeah. So I think those are the 5 things we're thankful of. Like
Mhm.
Eric, you did a nice job wrapping up all the things that you're
Yeah.
for. I think if, you're listening to it and some of the things were clicking, 7 Sage has all the resources at
Mhm.
different points in your test, no matter if you're stuck. If you're just starting, I recommend nothing better than co-curriculum and live classes. And if you're in advanced, I also recommend live classes for the very reasons Eric and I were talking about. You also have to know yourself if you need a bit more guidance and a
Yeah.
more small class. I love, courses that 7 Sage, has, and so, there's lots of avenues. One-on-one tutoring, you get personal feedback if you're stuck, at one point, I needed that. So highly recommend checking them out and utilizing all your resources, right? Your internal resource, your resilience barometer, building up your own strength, as Eric is talking about, your own patience, or externally as well, through all the resources we have. Eric, what do you think? Any last words? Any thankful.
Yeah, I would say on that note, I think it's important to keep an open mind about it, you know? I always believe, when I'm in my live classes, even now, and certainly when I was studying for the test, and I didn't attend live classes, I didn't know about them, but different like resources out there online and otherwise. Just keep an open mind. There's always something useful around the corner, right? And be willing to experiment with it and try things out. Especially if you're in a rut, score plateau, motivation wise or otherwise, I think it can really hopefully shed some light on what you're doing well, even, and
Yeah,
maybe things that you can improve on,
yeah.
if you just keep an open mind about it. Mhm.
Also, just as a funny note, don't keep too much of an open mind either. I've seen some ideas out there on like,
Yeah, that's true. There's some
yeah.
resources that I'm not so sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, definitely, like, that's what life class are there for. Like, ask us that question. Does this sound
Mhm.
sane? And I,
Tough.
I do keep an open mind, but there are times where I'm like, how would this make sense? Like this doesn't make any sense. And so, please, like, use your resources because you don't know what you need.
Mm,
And so, you may want to reach out to someone who does. So, you can get through this difficult process. So, yeah, this process shapes you. It's going to define your career as well. And so I hope that wherever you are in your journey, um, some of these things that we talked about are some things that help you. And um, we're definitely very grateful for for this journey.
absolutely.
Well, I think Eric and I are feeling the turkey a little bit. Are
Yup.
you?
I think it's ready. I'm ready for bed, I think, in a moment.
Well, great. Well, you know, thank you, Eric, for being here.
Of course.
And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, and I'm grateful that we had this wonderful episode that we could talk about. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye bye.